Dear ancestors, dear Thầy, dear brothers and sisters, and dear Sangha, this morning I came up to prostrate before the patriarchs and before Thầy, and I invited the ancestors, all of the spiritual ancestors. I invited Thầy to be present with me, to support me. And when I came into the meditation hall, I also took each step with the witness and presence of Thầy and our patriarchs. I see that our patriarchs and Thầy, they're very close to us. And I feel they're truly present in us. In each cell of our body, we carry the Buddha, the patriarchs, and Thầy. And sitting here, I feel that the patriarchs and Thầy and the Buddha are there to listen to their children share. So no matter what I say, I feel the patriarchs and the Buddha will smile and just accept what I have to say. And going back 18 centuries ago, during the 3rd century of Vietnam, at that time, there were a lot of traders from India. They came to North Vietnam for trade, and they waited for the southeast winds to come, and then they would travel to North Vietnam. And sometimes they would have to wait for the following year in order to travel, for the winds to be favorable for them to return to India. And during that time, they did business in Vietnam. So during that long period, sometimes they would have to bring along sutras, Buddha sutras, and Buddhism was able to come to Vietnam through that route, through sea trade routes. And sometimes on those boats, ships, they would invite some monastics to travel with the merchants, because they believed that the monastics, they had great peace in them, so it would bring about peace to the traveling ship. It's just like the Vietnamese people when they escaped from Vietnam in the 70s and late 60s and 70s. They also invited monastics to travel with them so that they could keep the peace on the boat. So it doesn't mean that Buddhism started to come to Vietnam in the 3rd century. Buddhism had slowly traveled to Vietnam, made its way into Vietnam from the 1st and 2nd centuries already. And it was in the 3rd century that Buddhism started to flourish in Vietnam. And so one of the traders who came to North Vietnam at that time, one was of Sogdian descent, and he married a Vietnamese woman and gave birth to a son. And Yao Zhou had the name of Yao Ji. It's one of them. It's a part of present-day North Vietnam right now. And the name Yao Zhou, Yao means to interact, and Ji means the address. So it's like the place of interaction between two cultures of India and China. And when Vietnam fell into the hands of the Han Dynasty, then they changed the name to Yao Zhou. Before, it was the name of Vietnam was Yao Ji. So the son born of the Sogdian father and Vietnamese mother, he became an orphan. He was orphaned at a very early age, and so he took refuge in the temples, and he grew up as a monk in the temple. And that was Master Tăng Hội. So Master Khương Tăng Hội was the first meditation master in Vietnam who was able to teach meditation in Vietnamese. And he was well versed not just in Buddhist teachings, but also in Confucianism, in Taoism. So he was also well learned in many different areas. So he was almost like the ideal monastic at that time. And he had founded some practice centers and transmitted the precepts to a number of monastics. And he so his teachers passed away quite early, and so he formed a practice center called Chùa Dâu. It's in northern Vietnam today. If you ever have a chance to go to visit Vietnam, especially North Vietnam, you can go and visit this center, and you can step on the grounds that our patriarch had once lived and taught. In 2005, when Thầy went back to Vietnam, Thầy also brought the Sangha to visit this place, the very first practice center in Vietnam, and we were able of Master Tăng Hội, and it was a wonderful experience for the Sangha. So if you have not visited that place, then if you ever have a chance, it would be nice to go there. So at that time in China, there were no monastics yet, and there were some lay practitioners who specialized in translating the sutras, but because Buddhism had not flourished there yet, so Master Tăng Hội, he traveled north to China and also started a practice center there. And when he came there, he also met with many difficulties because he was representing a religion that came to China for the first time. And he was one of the first monastics who came to China. Before that, there were no monastics yet. So, of course, his appearance was very strange to many people. And eventually his presence, news of his presence made its way to the king. And at the time, the king was not so happy. So he sent many intellectuals to come and to kind of debate with Master Tăng Hội. And when they had their debates, then they found that Master Tăng Hội was quite well versed, and was quite an intellectual himself, and also well versed in Confucianism and Taoism. So in the end, the king invited him into the palace, and after having had a few conversations with Master Tăng Hội, he was also convinced of the value of Buddhism, and he took on the 3 refuges and the 5 mindfulness trainings, and had then went on to help Master Tăng Hội establish the first center in China. And when the king Ngô Quyền passed away, King Tôn Hào came into power, and when he came into power, he really repressed Buddhism, and he destroyed many temples, but he didn't touch Master Tăng Hội temple. Master Tăng Hội temple was left alone because he had quite a following. But the second king also sent people to come and to debate with Master Tăng Hội, etc. But just like the previous king, those intellectuals were not able to find any fault in Master Tăng Hội. So he came back to the king, and he reported that, this person, Tăng Hội, is very talented. I cannot find anything wrong in his way of thinking. So please reconsider. So at the time, the king Tôn Hào also invited Master Tăng Hội into the palace, and after a while, Master Tăng Hội was also able to convince the king of the value of Buddhism, and he also took on the 3 refuges and 5 mindfulness trainings, and at the same time gave permission to Master Tăng Hội to continue to build his practice center, and also supported the resurrection of many other Buddhist temples. And so Master Tăng Hội had also organized for great ordination ceremonies. In the Buddhist tradition, when you have a great ordination ceremony to ordain new monks, then you have to have at least 7 witnesses, 3 masters and 7 witnesses. So it means that he had to invite other monastics from Vietnam to China to have those ordination ceremonies. So he passed away on the 10th of, today in the lunar calendar. So that's why today we are celebrating his memory today. And today we will also celebrate the continuation of Thầy. Thei's continuation day is actually tomorrow. And anyhow, today we celebrate Master Khương Tăng Hội, we celebrate Thầy, we celebrate Thei's mother for offering the world Thầy. So today we invite Master Tăng Hội, we invite Thầy, we invite Thei's mother to be present with us in everything that we do today. So Master Tăng Hội, his way of being is very noble. And even the intellectuals in the kingdom all praised him. And they had written gathas that were written at the foot of his statue. And those gathas are still in existence today. So one gatha is noble silence and solitude. That is his way, was his path. With the mind of a free person and emotions unattached, he brought a lamp to shine the way, and he was able to awaken people, overcoming all obstacles. He went far and never caught in worldly things. So he was a very quiet person, continued about his business, and he was able to bring the Dharma to many people. So he taught Mahayana Buddhism, but he also always referred to the sutras in the Theravadan tradition, especially the Anapanasati Sutra, the sutra on mindful breathing. He referred to many sutras in source Buddhism. And our teacher, Thầy, he also continues this tradition of Master Khương Tăng Hội. So we teach about meditation, we teach about mindful breathing. And Thầy had taught about mindful breathing even to his last breath. So today we will talk a little bit about the 4 establishments of mindfulness and also the practice of mindful breathing. Because these sutras are very basic, the sutra on mindful breathing is the Anapanasati Sutra. Anbang means to take refuge in the Buddha, in the breath, to come back to ourselves. So the Anapanasati Sutra was translated by An Thế Cao, An Sư Cao, and Master Tăng Hội had edited it and wrote a preface to that translation. So Thầy, our teacher, often mentions that when the day that he discovered the Anapanasati Sutra, the Sutra on Mindful Breathing, he felt he was the happiest person in the whole world. And so when we learn about the Sutra on Mindful Breathing, we will understand why Thầy was so happy when he discovered this sutra. So when Master Tăng Hội wrote the preface to the Sutra on Mindful Breathing, he also mentioned 6 ways to practice mindful breathing, 6 wonderful practices to master our breathing. So the first is to count the breath. The first method in mastering the breathing is to be able to just simply count our breathing. So that means to count the breaths. Breathing in, breathing out, we count that as one in breath, one out breath. Breathing in, breathing out, we say 2, that's the second breath. In, out, and you continue to count like that up to 10 breaths, and not to get distracted by anything. And you count from 1 to 10 breaths like that. If you and if by chance you should you have any distractions while you're counting the breathing, and you forget to count what breath you're on, then you simply start from the beginning again, from 1 to 10. So when we have counted up to 10 breaths and not have any kind of distraction, then our mind slowly comes into concentration. So this is a method that is often taught to people who first learn how to practice mindful breathing. And this is just a way for us to concentrate on our breathing. But after a few days practicing counting the breath like that, and you see that counting from 1 to 10, and you don't get distracted or you don't miscount, then you can move on to the second method of practice, is to simply follow the breathing. Tùy tức is to follow the breath. So we follow the breathing from the beginning of the breath to the end. For instance, beginning the in-breath, and you follow the in-breath from the beginning to the very end of the in-breath. And when we breathe out, we follow our in-breath from the beginning to the very end of that out-breath. And we continue to follow our breathing like that without having any thoughts coming up or being distracted. Then we find that our mind is coming into concentration. But if you follow the breath midway and you find that our thoughts have gone to Bordeaux or Paris or America, etc., then we can begin again following the breath from the beginning to the very end. So trying to keep concentrated, following the breath, being with the breath from the beginning to the very end without having any thoughts distracting us. And so in that way we can also bring our mind into concentration. And once we have been, we get better at following the breathing, we can use the third method. The third is stopping. It simply is to stopping at one object of mind. You can choose an object to concentrate your mind on. It could be the tip of your nose or in the dantian point. You just simply pay attention to one place, one thing, one object of mind. And whenever your mind wanders to other places, we bring our attention back to that one object of mind that we've chosen. So our breath is like a bridge to bring the mind back to the body. So if we find that our mind is wandering, we can bring the mind back to the object of mind that we want to choose to concentrate on. It could be the tip of our nose or dantian point. So this practice also helps to concentrate the mind with the breathing. The fourth method is contemplation. So Quang is to look deeply into an object of mind. For instance, you can look deeply into impermanence or non-self or dependent co-arising. And Master Tăng Hội taught us to look deeply into just one hair follicle. And in the hair follicle, you can recognize the whole cosmos. You can see the whole cosmos in one single strand of hair. You can also see our interbeing with everything that is. We can see the rise and falling, the rise and the coming to be and the ceasing of the whole cosmos. So this practice is very simple. If we practice deeply, we can see the whole cosmos present in ourselves. We can also see the whole coming to be and ceasing of the cosmos. So this is an invitation to contemplate, to look deeply. So the next method is coming home to returning to ourselves, returning to our breath, returning to our body, coming back to mindfulness so that we can master our mind and body. And the next method is purification. So we can purify our minds. And the way Master Tăng Hội describes it, Master Tăng Hội had translated many sutras, and one of the sutras is about the 6 paramitas. And he said our mind by nature is bright, but often is covered up by afflictions, so we don't really have clarity. And once we are able to transform the afflictions, then the clarity of mind, it manifests. So he taught us to use the 6 parameters to be able to remove the afflictions. he taught us to use five wholesome ways of practice to handle the afflictions. The first one is joy. The second is happiness. The third is shame or remorse. Tâm is like shame of oneself. Tư is like never mind. Tâm is to concentrate on one object. And tư is to bringing your mind to something. And when you, for instance, if your mind comes to a flower, and you can look deeply into it, and you can see that it cannot be there by itself, but it is there thanks to the person who has cultivated it. Thanks to the earth, the sky, etc. So the flower is made of non-flower elements. So our mind concentrates on the flower, looks deeply into the flower. That's called tư. And when we look deeply like that, we will have joy and peace. So if we want joy, Thầy has also taught us how to cultivate joy. One way is to letting go. Letting go is the source of joy. For instance, if we let go of the city and we come here, that is a source of joy. And then concentration is also a source of joy. Concentration is to focus on something, on an object. For instance, if we focus on a flower, then other afflictions are not pulling us away. So concentration also helps us to cultivate joy. But after we have practiced a while, we can let go of this joy, and we speak of a deeper happiness coming from the practice. We'll mention this in a little while. Tâm nhất cảnh is to concentrate our mind on one object. If our mind is not concentrated on one object, it's very difficult to practice meditation. If our mind is constantly dispersed, moving from one object to another, it's very difficult to practice. And so our joy, our concentration, our etc. is difficult to develop. So to practice is to learn how to concentrate on, is to learn how to concentrate our minds. And now we will move on to the sutra on this on mindful breathing, which speaks about the 16 exercises of mindful breathing. It's similar to the 4 establishments of mindfulness. So the first 4 exercises is about looking deeply in the body. So there are 4 mindful breathing exercises, 4 breathing exercises that will help us to look deeply into the body, within the body. So the first breath exercise is whether our breath is short or long, then we know that it's short or long. In the sutra, it says, breathing in a short breath, I'm aware I'm breathing in a short breath. Breathing out a short breath, I'm aware I'm breathing out a short breath. Breathing in a long breath, I'm aware I'm breathing in a long breath, etc. It doesn't mean that we will make our a breath long or short. It doesn't mean like that. It simply means that if our breath is short, we just simply acknowledge that it's short. If our breath is long, we simply acknowledge that it's long. So the first exercise is just to be aware of the breathing, of the breath. And when we have awareness of our breathing, we calm our breath, because maybe our breath is quick or not peaceful. Like when we're in a rush to go somewhere, then our breathing is definitely not peaceful. So coming back to the breathing, being aware of bringing awareness to the breathing, it calms the breath. When we are angry, when we are anxious, when we are afraid, our breath is also not calm and peaceful. So we can learn how to calm our breath. So the second exercise is simply to calm the breathing, calm the breath. The first one is simply to recognize it as it is. The second exercise is to calm the breath. The third exercise is to be aware of the whole body. Breathing in, I'm aware of the whole body. Breathing out, I'm aware of the whole body. So when we are aware of the breath, we begin to become aware of the whole body, from the top of our head to the bottom of our feet. And we are aware that if there are tensions in our body, we are aware of them and we release that tension. We release that pain. So the pain and tension is not just physical pain and tension, but sometimes the pain and tension is also caused by our mental states as well. For instance, when we're sad, suddenly we feel our intestines kind of like knotted, or when we're angry, we feel our heartbeat really fast. When we're anxious or afraid, we also feel our body like weighing down heavily, and we feel like there's not enough breath energy. So coming back to the body to recognize all of these, the things that are happening in the body, because body and mind, they're very intimately connected. We cannot separate the two. What happens to the body happens to the mind, and what happens to the mind affects the body. So coming back to the body, relaxing all of the pain and tension in the body, and when we are concentrated on our pain and tension, we are also concentrated on our body. And once we're concentrated on our body, we're not distracted by other kinds of thinking, like what the other person said to cause us pain or hurt, etc., or what they had said the day before or the week before or the year before. Sometimes they've said those things such a long time ago, but we still suffer from them. Why do we suffer? Because our mind is not concentrated. It's constantly being distracted by things that have happened in the past. And so the wounds in us don't have a chance to heal. So we have to come back to the body in order to heal the wounds that are there. So coming back to the body, taking care of the aches and pains that are in the body right now, we can at the same time take care of the aches and pains that are there in our memory, in our minds. But if we don't come back to our body, we don't take care of ourselves, we keep concentrating on what the other person has said or done to cause us hurt or pain, we continue to be in pain. So coming back to the body, recognizing where the pain is, where the tension is, and releasing the pain and tension. Healing ourselves by coming back to the body. Healing the mind also by coming back to the body. So the fourth exercise is to calm the body, calm the whole body. In the sutras, the Buddha said when a practitioner, when he walks, he knows that when they walk, they know they're walking. When they are lying down, they know they're lying down. When they hold the bowl, they know they're holding the bowl. In any position the body is in, they are aware of that position of the body. And not only a practitioner, but a bodhisattva also practices like that. When he walks, when they walk or eat or wear their clothing, they are aware of all of the positions that their body are in. So aware of the whole body and relaxing the whole body. So this is how to look deeply into the body, within the body. It means we don't leave our body. We are constantly coming back to our body in order to take care of the body, to heal the pain, aches and pains that are there within the body. The second establishment of mindfulness is the feelings. So looking into the feelings, within the feelings. The fifth exercise of mindful breathing is aware of a feeling of joy. Thầy taught us that to practice, you have to be joyful. I mean, you need joy. It doesn't mean that we don't have a right to suffer. We don't have a right to have difficulties. Don't wait until all of our suffering, all of our difficulties have ended in order to be happy, because happiness and suffering inter-are. So don't ever wait until the suffering has ended in order to start experiencing joy or happiness. And we are much more than our suffering. Suffering is only one small part of us, so not to allow the suffering to overwhelm us. And that's why we have to nourish our joy every day. What makes us happy, we have to cultivate it every day. If sitting meditation brings us joy, we do sitting meditation every day. If walking meditation brings us joy, that's what we do in order to cultivate joy for ourselves. And we have to cultivate these things, the things that bring us joy every single day. So the sixth exercise is to be aware of a feeling of happiness. So happiness runs deeper than joy. Joy is heat in Vietnamese. So there's two separate words for joy and happiness. An lạc is happiness. Like our mother, if she goes shopping and then she buys us a treat, and when she comes home, we know that for sure we'll have a treat. So we're very excited, we're very enthusiastic, and we run to our mother. And when she takes out the treat, and when we hold that treat in our hands and we sit down and we actually eat the treat, at that time we're very happy. So that is called happiness. So in that happiness, there's peace in there. We just enjoy. We simply enjoy the. So it is deeper than the joy. Like Thầy, he often gives the example, if we've crossed a desert and once we see an oasis, we're very happy. We know that once we get to that oasis, we see the oasis, we're very happy, we're very joyful, we're happy to see it. That is just joy. But when we get to the oasis and we actually drink the water from the oasis, that is happiness. We feel all of the fatigue and the thirst like dissipate right away. That is happiness. So that is the difference between the joy and happiness. Like many of our friends who come to Plum Village for the first time, you let go of everything in the cities and you come here and you feel light right away, and that's joy. But we haven't tasted the depth of the practice. But when we're able to walk on this land very peacefully with solidity, we're able to let go of everything around us. We simply come back to be in touch with Mother Earth, with our ancestors, land and genetic ancestors. We feel our steps are solid, our steps are stable. In each step, we feel there's nourishment. In each step, we feel healing. At that time, we feel the happiness of the practice. So we've tasted the happiness of the practice. So the last time we have mentioned letting go is as a source of joy. Happiness, my concentration as a source of joy. So the joy that we've experienced initially, sometimes we have to let go in order to experience a deeper happiness. So letting go as a source of happiness. So sometimes we see something, we become excited, enthusiastic about it right away. We feel joyful, but we haven't really tasted it yet. So that initial joy, we have to let go in order to taste the happiness. So the next exercise is to be aware of the feeling that is there. Whatever the feeling is there, we are aware that the feeling is there. If there is a painful feeling, we are aware that there's a painful feeling here, and we don't run away from it. We have painful feelings. What kind of painful feelings do we have? We have to come back and to recognize them. We can only transform them once we're able to recognize them. Only when we're able to recognize them can we begin to understand them, understand the roots of this painful feeling. Why do we continue to experience this painful feeling? Why does it come up all the time? So if we cannot stop, if we cannot recognize it, then we cannot begin to look deeply into it and to understand it and to transform it. So we practice to recognize these painful feelings. And the 8th exercise is to be able to calm the painful feeling. So this is the area of feelings, looking deeply into the feelings, within the feelings. And the next establishment of mindfulness, next area that we can look into is mind. So looking deeply in the mind, within the mind. So the 9th exercise on mindful breathing is aware of our mental formation. What kinds of mental formations are there? We recognize that it is there. For instance, if a mental formation of anger is there, or sadness, or frustration, or jealousy, or worry, anxiety, we recognize it as it is. And we don't have to analyze it. We don't have to run away from it. For instance, if we were jealous, we had the mental formation of jealousy, and we think, oh, why? I'm already a monastic, but I still have this mental formation. And we keep thinking why we have it, and we blame ourselves, etc. That is not mere recognition of a mental formation that is going on. To recognize a mental formation that is going on, we simply say, there's jealousy in me. I recognize there's jealousy in me. And we also don't have to judge that this mental formation is better than the other mental formation. This is more wholesome than the other one. All of it needs to be cared for and to be transformed. Just like when we eat, we don't have to judge that we're eating fast or slow, etc. We just slowly get used to the rhythm that we're doing it in, and we take care. So we have to be brave enough in order to recognize the mental formation that is there. And when we have the courage to recognize the mental formation that is there, we can rely on the breath. We can anchor ourselves in the breathing. And when our mind is not, when there's the energy of mindfulness in us is not strong, then we easily get dispersed, distracted by this or that. But when the energy of mindfulness in us is stronger, then we feel much more at peace. If sorrow comes up, if sadness comes up, if loneliness comes up, we can still be there with what is there in our mind. So the next exercise is to calm the mental formation. It's very scientific, these exercises. So calming the mental formations with our mindful breathing. Our mindful breathing, our breath, even though it is very fragile, very sometimes we don't even notice it, we don't even see it, we just feel it coming in and out. But it has the capacity to help us to master our mind. Master Khương had said, Master Khương Tăng Hội, he said, he spoke about mindful breathing as a way of mastering our mind. He said, he had a line like, you cast just a silken thread, but you can catch a whole tiger. So with our mindful breathing, we can wrap, we can tame the tiger, meaning we can tame our mental formations with our mindful breathing. Like the lotuses, a lotus stalk, if you break the lotus stalk, we'll find like there's a silken thread. And actually, if you break it, that silken thread is so strong, it can still hold that other part of the stalk. So our breathing can connect our mental formations, can connect our feelings, and it can tame our mental formations. So our mental formations is likened to a tiger. And the tiger can kill someone or can attack, can etc. So we have to be able to tame the tiger, and we tame the tiger with our mindful breathing. I remember in 2006, Thầy gave a Dharma talk, and he spoke about mindful breathing, and he also spoke about taming the tiger with a silken thread. And at that time, Thầy, he had a ball of yarn, and he said, we have to be able to tame our mind. We have to be able to tame our feet, because our habits, it keeps pulling us, it keeps making us rush, run, etc. So we keep rushing, we have running, we keep striving, and that's why we have to tame our mind with the silken thread, or the mindful breathing. So after that Dharma talk, Thầy placed that ball of yarn on the altar, and after the Dharma talk, everyone came up to the altar to cut a strand of yarn and tie it, bind it to the ankle, to make the vow that we will bind our feet, we will bind ourselves in mindfulness, and we vow to practice to walk mindfully. So I remember after that Dharma talk, I also came up and prostrated before the altar, cut a piece of yarn and tied it to my ankle so that it could remind me to walk in mindfulness, and to remind me to come back to my steps and to my mindful breathing. But month after month, my steps fall, are no longer very present. I'm not very present with my steps anymore. And so this morning I came into Thay's room and I prostrated before Thay's cushion in his room. And I also brought a ball of yarn and I cut a piece of yarn and to tie it around my ankle to renew my vow, to take steps in peace, take steps in joy, to be able to come back to the present moment when I'm walking, so that I can let go of my habits of rushing. And I also brought this ball of yarn here. And in a few moments, I will place it on the ancestral altar, on Thay's altar. And so for those of us who have not heard that Dharma talk from Thay, or for anyone who wants to make the commitment and to practice like this, we can make the commitment, we can make the vow before Thay's altar, before the ancestral altar, and then we cut a piece of yarn to tie on our ankle, just as a reminder to help us to practice mindful walking. And we can, when all of us have a commitment to walk mindfully like this, we can create a very powerful collective energy. And the powerful collective energy can, in return, come back to help each one of us to heal. So all of us, we contribute to the collective energy, but in return, we receive a much more powerful energy from the collective. So in the Dharma talk, the methods of meditation, he also spoke about the mind of practice. What is the mind of practice? We have to be determined. We have to be courage. It doesn't mean that we want to be concentrated, that we can be concentrated, or that we force ourselves to concentrate on an object, that we can be able to do that. But we have to have determination. We have to, so we have to have a way to bind ourselves, to commit to that. And in that way, we can slowly transform our afflictions and to cultivate the more wholesome qualities in us. And that's why we have to always nourish our bodhicitta, nourish the flame within us. If we find our flame is getting dull, then we always have to do something to bring that flame alive again. So the next exercise is to concentrate our mind. We have to be able to concentrate on an object of mind. For instance, if the object is our body, we can concentrate, keep the focus on our body. If we can choose the object of our concentration, could be a flower. And when we look at the flower, we can see its non-self nature. Or if we can concentrate on interbeing, for instance, so then we have the concentration on interbeing. So concentration does not mean to sit in one place 24/7, etc. It simply means our mind is concentrated on one object of mind. It's like when we want to cook potatoes, we have to keep the lid on and the flame constant so that the potatoes can cook. But if we were to turn on and off the fire, then the potatoes will never cook. So when we want to understand something deeply, when we want to make a breakthrough, we have to keep our concentration on that one object of mind. So we can choose any practice, any teachings, any object, whether it's impermanence, non-self, interbeing, interdependent, co-arising, etc. We simply concentrate our mind on one thing. And actually, when we're able to understand one thing deeply, we will be able to understand all the other concepts because they are all interrelated. The 12th exercise is to free the mind, to liberate the mind. Breathing in, I liberate my mind. Breathing out, I liberate my mind. When we come back to our mind, we can recognize the things that are imprisoning us, the things that we are currently caught in. Maybe we're caught in our projects right now. Maybe we are caught in our ideas of happiness. Maybe we are caught in just the words that someone has said ages and ages ago, but every time we think about it, we continue to suffer, we continue to cry over those words. So we have to find a way to let go of those things. So when we come back to our mind and we learn how to practice with our mind, that is the most difficult thing that but we have to do it. We have to be able to learn how to come back to ourselves. That's the most difficult thing to do, but we have to be able to do it. Coming back to ourselves, we can recognize so many things that are there, all of the afflictions, so many things that we've piled up, even from one generation to the next generation. Some things have been transmitted to us from our ancestors, but they're still there in us. So we have to be able to look deeply to recognize these things and to liberate ourselves from these things. And once we're able to liberate ourselves from these things, we also are liberating our descendants from these things as well, because we won't be transmitting these afflictions, these kinds of pains to our children and descendants. And when we liberate ourselves, at the same time, we're able to liberate our ancestors, our parents as well. There are some people who are able to help so many people, but they cannot come back to themselves. They cannot face themselves. They cannot overcome their own loneliness, their own pain. There are some people who are very successful. They can make so many people laugh. They can entertain so many people. They can help so many people. But when it comes to themselves, when it comes to facing their own suffering, their own loneliness, they cannot get out of it. There are those who even have resorted to suicide. And there are those who are very successful. in what they do. They've brought joy and happiness to so many other people, but yet with themselves, they haven't been able to liberate themselves from their own pain and suffering. So with our mindful breathing, we have to train ourselves to come back, to recognize the pain that is there, the loneliness, the emptiness, etc., to be able to transform them. And then we will have real power. We have strength, real strength. So we have to be able to come back to ourselves and recognize what is imprisoning us right now, what is binding us right now. Why aren't we happy? Why aren't we liberated? Sometimes the idea of liberation itself is the very obstacle of our own liberation, because we're caught in the idea of liberation. So we even have to let go of ideas of freedom or liberation in order to be free. So coming back, being more open, we can be more receptive to everything that comes to us. The fourth establishment of mindfulness is the objects of mind in the objects of mind, looking deeply at the objects of mind in the objects of mind. So the first exercise is to look deeply into impermanence. There are two kinds of impermanence. One is point instant impermanence. It changes very, very quickly. Shakna means the smallest unit of time, so point instant impermanence. And very fast, the smallest unit of time. And so things are always changing, even in the smallest unit of time. It never remains the same. From the previous moment to this moment, it's different. And the next moment is different. The moment before and the moment after, things have already changed. So things are changing, constantly changing like that. The second type of impermanence is impermanence in terms of it has a cyclic impermanence. Like when we plant something, when we put a seed in the earth, then it has its cycle. It sprouts and then it becomes a plant. And that is the cycle of growth of the plant. And when the plant is producing fruits or flowers, that's its cycle. So in that cycle, within the cycle, there's also change. So there's point instant impermanence and cyclic impermanence. So we have to look deeply into impermanence, especially look deeply into our loved ones and to recognize their impermanence, whether momentary impermanence or their cycles, their stages. A few months ago, I was able to go home and to take care of my father. Now he's getting old and weak, and he's only able to sit in a wheelchair right now. And I sat down with him one day and I said, "Do you have any regrets, Dad?" And he said, "No, I have nothing. I have no regrets." And I said, "But if you were to die, then do you have any regrets? Is there anything that you have not been able to realize?" And he said, "No, I have nothing. I have no regrets. Everything that I've been able to do, I've done already." So then I asked, "Well, are you afraid of death?" He's like, "No, I'm not afraid of death. If you grow old, then naturally you have to die. No one lives forever." So that it made me really at peace, because I saw my father is not afraid of dying, because he said, "Oh, it's natural that we die. when we grow old and we die. And then he said, well, but when I'm still alive, of course, then my children and grandchildren will be happy. So any day that I'm still living is happiness for my children and grandchildren. So my father has a very positive mentality. But anyhow, we have to come back and to recognize impermanence in our loved ones. Even the people who cause us difficulties, maybe that person doesn't have good intentions towards us, but that person from the previous moment and now is different already. So we can also learn how to look at people with new eyes, and in looking at people with new eyes, at the same time, we allow them a chance to change. But if we look at someone and we keep hanging on to our perceptions of them, we hold them. We hold them onto those perceptions. If we say things like, why are you always like that? Then actually we keep that person in that place because we're discouraging them from even changing. So we have to recognize the impermanence of the people around us, of everyone. Everyone is changing constantly in every moment. So don't hang on to images of the past and suffer over them, and don't be victims of our past or victims of anyone. Don't wait for that person to apologize in order to stop suffering, or don't wait until you are right or that person is right in order to stop suffering. That other person is wrong, so they have to apologize to me, and I have to be able to forgive them in order to be happy. So don't allow ourselves to be a victim of anyone's apology. Don't wait for an apology. Whether the apology comes or not, it's that person's business. Our own business is to be able to let go so that we can cultivate our own happiness, our own joy. And letting go, it's not just thinking, oh, I have to let go of this, or I want to let go of this, that I can. But with insight, then we can let go very easily. When we have understanding, we can let go easily. So with impermanence itself, it might not be able to help us let go, but the insight on impermanence can help us to let go. And insight can come to us in a flash. We don't have to think about it. We don't have to think like, oh, this has changed in this way or that way. No, that is only understanding impermanence through the intellect. That's not yet insight. When impermanence is insight, then our understanding comes in a flash. And we can also understand a lot of our suffering through impermanence. So the next exercise on mindful breathing is non-craving, looking deeply into non-craving. So it doesn't mean that we see that we don't have any craving right now. So we look at an object and the object itself is not craving, but it's our grasping of it that is craving. For instance, we have a beautiful teapot, and a younger sister says, "Dear sister, let me rinse your teapot for you." And you really love this teapot, but then while she went to rinse your teapot, she broke it. And then you really you want to hang on to this teapot. And of course, you tell your younger sister, no, it's no problem, but inside you're regretting it. You're grasping it. Because the teapot is in itself is impermanent. We don't have to hang on to it. Or we see something beautiful, whether a person or an object, and we want to covet this object. We want to own it. But we know that these things are also impermanent. They are also they will also one day not be there. So we don't need to grasp it. So the Buddha often encouraged us to look deeply into the 5 kinds of cravings, like wealth, power, sex, money, etc. So we see someone beautiful and we want to covet this person. But when we see the true nature of this person, we don't have to crave. Position or power is the same. They're also impermanent, very fragile. Why do we have to sacrifice our whole life in order to chase after these things and to experience all kinds of suffering? So the nature of non-craving of all objects of mind. So when we recognize the nature of non-craving of things, we don't have to grasp after them. So non-craving is just a representative of one object of mind. We can also see that non-craving is just one. There's also non-greed, non-anger, non-hatred, etc. There's a story, a very funny story. There's a person who is rowing upstream, and then there's another boat that is going downstream, and it's going very fast. So the person rowing a boat upstream, he's alarmed, and he's afraid the other boat might run into his boat because they are traveling in mist and fog, and he was afraid the other person won't see him. So he screamed, I'm here, don't run into my boat. But the other boat still crashed into his boat, and it made his boat capsize. And then he was cursing. It's like, are you blind? I've already screamed at the top of my lungs. Why didn't you hear me? But when he got back on the boat, he realized there was no one on the other boat. It was an empty boat because it had the anchor had been cut, its line had been cut, so then the boat was going downstream. So as soon as he recognized that there was no one on the other boat, then his anger had disappeared. So when we see clearly something, when we're able to understand something, then immediately our afflictions, what we suffer from, it just disappears right away. So we have to learn how to look deeply into the objects, the things that make us suffer, and to have an understanding. The next exercise is to no birth, no death. Looking deeply into no birth or no death, or it could be called nirvana, looking deeply into nirvana. Nirvana is the absence of all views of about being or non-being, coming and going, better or not better. So we have to recognize the no birth, no death nature of that thing. Like a flower. A flower is made of many, many conditions. It does not have a separate self-existence. It does not have a separate existence. If we take the cultivator, if we take the soil, if we take the sun, if we take the rain out of the flower cannot be because it's not born. Because it is not born, then it also does not die. When we see a flower is withered, it doesn't mean that it has died. it will continue in other forms. It will come back to the earth. It will become compost. It will continue to nourish other plants, other flowers, other trees, and it will grow again. It will come to life again. So in terms of time, we see it as impermanence because it is constantly changing in every moment, every shatna. But in terms of space, we see it as non-self because it is always receiving and there's always input and there's always output. Like a flower, it is always receiving input from the atmosphere, from the light, from the soil, etc. It's constantly receiving input, these kinds of inputs, and at the same time, it is giving output. It is giving out its beauty. It is giving out its fragrance. It's giving out its shape and form. So there's always inputs and there's always outputs. So that is non-self. So when we're able to recognize one object of mind, we will be able to recognize all the other objects of mind very clearly. And when we recognize impermanence and non-self, our mind does not compare, it does not calculate, because we see that we are made of non-us elements, including our brothers and sisters, our children, our mother, our teacher, the people who make us, who bring us happiness, as well as the people who bring us pain and sadness. They are all in us. So when we are mad at someone, we're actually mad at ourselves as well, because that person is already a part of us. That person is one of the elements that make us. So when we hate someone, we are also hating ourselves, because we are made of non-us elements, including the other person. So when we're able to recognize the nature of non-self, our hatred or anger against that other person can also disappear. We also don't discriminate against the other person, because we are also made of the other person. So that is called, and then all of our ideas, all of our views also disappear, and that is called nirvana. Nirvana is made of impermanence and non-self. Nirvana is the nature of impermanence and non-self, of interdependent co-arising. The example that Thầy always uses to help us see this clearly, he always gets a coin. Thầy gets a coin and he says, the head and tail of the coin, we distinguish the head and the tail, but to have that coin, it is thanks to the copper or the silver that has made of that makes that coin. The coin is made of silver or copper. So nirvana is the substance of nirvana and of impermanence and non-self. In terms of time, we see it as impermanent. In terms of space, we see it as non-self. And looking at objects of mind, understanding objects of mind through impermanence, through non-self, through nirvana, we can liberate ourselves from many of our afflictions. So our loved one, we don't have to wait until they die in order to see their manifestation all around us. Right now, if we look deeply, we can already see our loved ones in their children, in their grandchildren, etc. And when they pass away, we have no fear because we already see their continuation. So the last exercise is letting go. So letting go here means letting go of ideas, of notions of right and wrong, notions about self and others, notions about living beings. All of these ideas, notions, are at the root of our suffering. So that's why we have to learn how to let go of these notions. We're not only learning to let go of, letting go doesn't only mean letting go of possessions, but also letting go of notions, because these notions are the notions that cause us suffering. So in the Diamond Sutra, Dubudi asked, I forgot his name, asked Shari how to how can we liberate all beings? The Buddha said, well, whether beings are born from eggs, from the womb, from etc., we have to liberate all beings. And even if we liberate all beings, you will see that there's no beings to liberate. Why? Because if we see that there are beings to be liberated, we are still caught in the idea of beings, of living beings. And when we our generosity is the same thing. If we donate with the idea, based on ideas, then the merit is very little. But if we donate, if we give, and we're not caught in anything in order to give, then that merit is great. It's immeasurable. So these are the 4 establishments of mindfulness, and no matter how long we have practiced, we always have to come back to these practices. And the first exercises, the first 10 exercises is just to simply calm our body, calm our feelings, calm our mind. But from exercises 11 to 16, they are there to help us to look deeply and to help to concentrate our mind and to get a breakthrough. And to get a breakthrough in order to liberate ourselves from what we're suffering from inside. Some things we've carried with us for many, many years already, and we haven't had a breakthrough to free ourselves from them yet. So these exercises are help us to you can measure our improvement in the practice through these exercises as well. We can constantly come back to the practice of the 16 exercises on mindful breathing to see where we are in the practice. And once we have mastered the 16 exercises on mindful breathing, we can help so many people. The more people we help, the more happiness we can bring to so many people. But while on the journey of helping other people, while on path of service, if there are anger, if there are afflictions that come up, we always have to come back to these practices of the 16 exercises of mindful breathing to practice. In the Buddhist literature, there's an image of a bodhisattva of Avalokiteshvara with 1,000 hands. One hand has a bell, another hand has a sutra, another hand has a musical instrument, etc. Because the world needs needs help in so many areas, and that's why he has to have thousands of different kinds of tools and instruments in order to be of service. If the world needs food, then he would need like kitchen utensils to cook, etc. If the world needs more food, more vegetables, and you need to have your garden tools. If the world needs online retreats, we have to have computers and phones, etc. And in each hand, there's also an eye. That eye represents understanding. Only with understanding can we love. And each hand of this bodhisattva is beautiful. There's no hand that is less beautiful than the other hand, the other arms. The hand that's holding the bell is beautiful. It's just as beautiful as the hand that's holding the phone. The hand that's holding the sutra is just as beautiful as the hand that's holding the laptop. And so that's how he's able to help so many beings. So if we don't have 1,000 hands, each one of us can also be a hand of the Buddha, the hand of the Bodhisattva. Each one of us can be the eye of the Bodhisattva, and in that way we can be of great service to humanity. Today is the Memorial Day of Master Khương Tăng Hội, so we invite Master Khương Tăng Hội and we invite Thầy to also walk with us. Today during the walking meditation, we invite them to walk with us to see that they have never left us. He's still here with us. In each of our steps, in each step that we take, the patriarchs are there. In each step that we take, Thầy is there. And not only Thầy and Master Tăng Hội, but all of our spiritual and genetic ancestors. So each step that we make, we can see the countless steps of the Buddhas, the Bodhisattvas, of the patriarchs, of the land ancestors, genetic ancestors. And whether or not we're able to bring our ancestors to the future with any peace, it depends on the quality of steps that we are making today. So thank you so much for coming today, and we wish you a very peaceful walking meditation today. Thank you.